On this first episode of Obsessed Wash and Drive, I'm gonna wash the S2000. The S2000 takes specific care because it's black and it's extremely soft. I don't like to pigeonhole paints as hard and soft. I think that gets overplayed in this game of washing and detailing cars. I don't think it really matters. You just treat the paint however it needs to be treated. This thing needs to be treated with extra care because if I push on it, it will scratch it. Even if I don't push on it, it probably still will scratch it. And so I'm going to take you through all the products that we're using and why, and then we'll go for a drive. Basically what I'm going to use here on the wheels is my Mosmatic gun with my own system of quick disconnects with a 40-degree nozzle. The size of this is what dictates how much pressure we have coming out, and then this is a swiveling gun so that my hose doesn't get bound up. This is Nexzet ColorTech, safe to use on pretty much any surface. I don't use this spray bottle. I've been testing and using this Tolco Mega Round with a I think this is a 640 sprayer, and so I've been applying it using this. I clean the wheels often, so I don't need to obsess over letting it sit and break down the wheel dust, because the wheel dust is going to come off pretty quickly. Here is a Microfiber Madness Incredibrush. This is a flat version. This is a Race Glaze XL detail brush I use to get the lug areas. Lambskin 4-finger mitt. Get in my store. I import these from the UK from a company called Flexi Pads. Next product will be Adam's Tire and Rubber Cleaner. Same story here. I'm using and testing my Mega Round and Tolco 640 sprayer. And the cheapest, best product that I use in my arsenal is the Tough Shine tire brush, which is great because on a lowered car, I'm able to get up in here and not have to worry about hitting the fender. Easy Detail Large, use that to get up under. Clean wheel. I'm gonna rinse with deionized water. All right, so we're going to use MTM Hydro PF22 foam cannon, 150 mLs of Adam's car shampoo. I've tested lots of other shampoos. This is my favorite. And then we're going to use the Kamikaze sponge on the S2000. I'm going to use 4 of them and do my best to swipe as few times as possible, touch the paint as gently as possible. If you haven't watched my videos in the past, yes, I'm the jerk that has a $345 bucket package. Prie hose bib. This is a 4-inch frost-free, very stout hose bib with a Brasscraft 24-inch water heater hose that you have to convert to garden hose. So to convert from NPT to MGT, and then I have a quick disconnect on it in case I ever wanted to disconnect anything. If I wanted to take this is an old school Adams fire hose nozzle. Hope I don't get my finger stuck. There's a little bit of the car that's in the sun, but we're okay because I've got deionized water. Now I know what you're thinking about using these sponges rather than a microfiber foam pad or microfiber towels. I promise you, unless you've tried these are softer, especially when they're wet. Add another ounce or 3. Adams gives you an insane amount of suds. If you haven't watched the Japanese car washing procedure video and you want to learn about how I do this, go check that out. I'll put that up here in the top of the video. The general idea here is to do as little touching of the paint as possible, continuing to revisit the rinse bucket really often. And then I'll swap out sponges after every major panel. I'm constantly checking the pad, make sure there's nothing stuck to it. Now this is a clear wrap on the front here, so I can do a larger section at once. So the general procedure on this car that I use, I'll only dry it, hand dry it, use a drying aid on it. once after every few washes. So this wash will be a simple deionized rinse, and I'll blow the car off. So I tend to have a bad habit of touching the paint when I'm washing, but notice the S2000, I don't have that urge. I have a much more meticulous washing procedure with this. All right, so nothing special about the rinsing procedure. Using our 40-degree nozzle. You know, with a pressure washer, and we'll talk more about this, I want it so that I can wash my hands off and not cut them. That way I wouldn't hurt the paint as well. Man, I love washing this car. It's so easy, it's so small. Quickly run some fresh water through the pressure washer, get the DI water out of there so it doesn't leach the head. All right, so we'll quickly hit the brake rotors with some Hyde's Serum Rust Stopper. This stuff, give a few squirts to each rotor, and then I go and blow dry off so that any little extra doesn't sit on the wheels and dry. This particular wash will be just a blow dry. I could actually leave this on the paint if I wanted to because it's deionized water, but I want to blow dry it off so I can dress the tires. This is a Ego 530 CFM air volume model that I bought and I'm trying out to decide if I want to buy the bigger 575 CFM version. Ear protection. All right, the good news is the Ego made it all the way through on turbo. You really have to use a turbo mode to drive the car, but it made it all the way through the entire car with battery still left. I always clean the windows after every wash, no matter what. So this is Optimum OptiGlass Clean and Protect, and I believe what's on the windshield is CarPro Forte Fly-by-30 using the Rag Company microfiber waffle weave towel, which I sell in the Obsessed Garage store. So I'll do that to all the windows. There was a little bit of soap that blew off the wing here using my my Rag Company preferred drying towel. Little ECH2O. And I'm just gently, very gently on this black paint, wipe that area so I don't end up with any spots. This is the Rag Company Minx. I'm gonna wipe off the door jambs here. I always clean the door jambs after every wash, even though I'm not doing this is a quick wash, keep them from getting dirt built up. Also clean up the trunk area and under the hood. All right, so I got my Shop Vac Professional. This little 5-gallon, 6.5 horsepower. My interior windows rarely need to be cleaned. So what I'll generally do, this is Nexet Cockpit Premium. Just spray a little on a towel. Just wipe the dash down. Wipe the center console down. Here on top of the steering wheel. And we're done. Last little step is to take some Griot's interior scent, the fine leather version. Just spray some on the carpet. The very last thing I'll put on the car before we go for a drive is CarPro Pearl. Lay it on reasonably thick, and I'll come back around and wipe the excess off with my wheel towel. So that's the wash procedure, a normal routine washing procedure. So let's go for a drive. Car's good and warm. So we're ready to go let it rip. All right, so what I intend to do in this series is we'll talk about little specific features of the car and little things that interest me, and then hopefully I can talk to them intelligently. So today let's talk a little bit about the Kraftwerks Supercharger. I had originally intended to install this myself, buy one, install it, share the whole process, and eventually I grew impatient because I wanted to do the exhaust and the header And so I decided, well, if I'm going to do that, let me just go get the darn supercharger done. So I called John at LHT, and thank goodness I did. They were really awesome in letting me come and video them and share the process. Cool, and then saved me a whole lot of headache, and I'm sure I would have done it wrong anyway. This thing is insane. So, the install is something that guys are sending their S2000s from all over the country. Unless you're, just a real man, super mechanic, or someone who has some skills, but with a wrench. Unlike me, I just, I know how to use a wrench, but I wouldn't call myself skilled. I think you want to send it to those guys. So, this car has the 30mm pulley, which creates quite a bit more whine. This car is hard to manage. I could sit here and drive like this, like comfortable in my GT3 RS, but this car, I feel like I've got to be concentrating. 30mm pulley instead of the 20mm pulley should add some durability. I don't think it adds any horsepower, but I think John does it for longevity and durability. But the first thing you'll notice when you're driving around town with a supercharger, and I'm sure you can hear a little bit of the whine, but in person, if you take the drone out of the exhaust, if I could do it all over again, I would have just done the LHT twin loop, which I'll probably still end up doing at some point anyway. I'm sure John will talk me into it. But doing their twin loop skunk 2 header, I'll probably gain 15 horsepower over what I have now. The car dynoed at 404 horsepower with this kit, and the way the car's set up with the little primaries on the Toyota header. But I just had nostalgic desires to have that Toyota header. But it drives. Now remember, the car's 200 horsepower more than stock, so it drives very different than stock, but still retains the same sort of linear characteristics in that there's very little. There's nobody home, and then you get that sort of rush of power. The other thing that John does is he tunes in VTEC. I think it's tuned at 4,200 RPMs, and so you get into VTEC, get into the power band much quicker. Not only do we have 200 more horsepower, double the horsepower, we have it quicker, sooner. We're in the power band really, really quickly in this thing. The only detriment, the only non-OE feel of the way that this is set up, other than just too much horsepower for too little of a car, is I will have some issues with third gear locking me out at times when I'm really on it. We'll see if it happens up here. I just have to pay attention and make sure to, because the transmission on this, which I'm sure I'll do a video, a follow-up wash and drive video of the transmission specifically to the S2000. But it will tend to lock me out, so I just have to be deliberate, because you can get lazy with this transmission because it's so smooth. The whine grows on you. There's a combination of the supercharger whine and then of course the exhaust. See there, I locked myself out in third gear. There's 100 really quickly. This thing is mega fast, but it's hard to handle. Even with the 255 square setup, it's just such a different experience than driving any other car that I've ever driven, just because of the short wheelbase. The thing it feels very different than obviously a stock S2000, which you can just rag out. So having the supercharger kit turns this thing into a viable sports car, even in comparison to cars today. But like rolling in fifth gear, rolling onto the throttle at 4,000 RPMs in a stock S2000 is nothing, certainly not exciting. The Clutchmaster's clutch is a little chattery, especially when it's cold, but driving it around is pretty basic. So that's one of the things, the combination. You do the Kraftwerks Supercharger, you got to add a heftier clutch. I don't think the stock clutch will last very long with something this significant, you know, from a power perspective. I think you'll blow through the clutch in really, really short order. So having the clutch, I think, is a must. This thing certainly moves with the Kraftwerks Supercharger. It's just, it's a completely different animal. So, you know, install is pretty basic. The advantage is double the horsepower. The advantage is very reliable, very streetable, very usable. We retain linear power that, you know, so we have the same power delivery of the S2000 that you'd be accustomed to in an S2000. Downshifting, super easy. Rev matching is easy. I've been leaving VSA, the Vehicle Stability Assist, but I don't think it's really going to do much. I think what I'll probably end up doing as time goes on, and we do, you know, a few dozen of these videos, I'll be talking more specifically about individual products. You know, doing a 20-minute out and back, talking about, you know, the transmission of the S2000, but while we were washing it, turning the video into a specific video about, say, Hyde's Rust Stopper Serum or something like that. Holy crap. This thing is insane. It pulls and pulls and pulls. Feels like a darn freight train in comparison to, you know, a stock S2000, which is, you know, which just doesn't do it for me. There you go, stability assist kept the power under control there. Unless you get behind the wheel of it and you can experience it, it's really hard to explain. Well, I've mentioned this before in other videos that, you know, I could probably do with maybe 75 less horsepower. You know, it's hard to give it up. You know, if it's there, why not take it? But it's one of those things where you'd almost, you know, it's fun to drive the car, you know, harder, you know, toward the limit. Let's turn the VSA off and hopefully I don't end up in the ditch. It's also hard to not just roll on the throttle. You want to get right in it, which, I don't know, it's interesting to explain, but it you know, you just want to go red line, wide open throttle all the time. And so that's been part of the change in me getting used to driving the supercharger, driving with the supercharger, and just driving it, but not having to rack on it all the time. But anyway, the wash was pretty basic on this, other than the extra procedural difference where I'm using the Kamikaze sponges. Using those sponges in combination with more care in order to protect the black paint. You know, less tendency to go and touch. I want to touch the paint as little as possible on this. So I want to dry it less often if I can. The disadvantage to that, I feel like it doesn't come out quite as clean and shiny. There are some water spots on the rear area and the rear bumper that I'll have to address at some point here. I'll probably make a whole video on that specifically, using spotless, and then I'll probably end up having to repolish the rear bumper. That's one of the disadvantages of coatings, is having to deal with the water spots. Thanks for watching this first wash and drive. I'll do my best to get better at it, stick to the point, and hopefully take you on cool little drives in different cars, and beating on them a little bit, talking to you about it from an owner's perspective, and someone who's had these cars for a while. So anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, stay tuned for more crazy. What happens when the force pulls you back, your foot naturally comes off the gas. You have to keep your foot to the floor, foot to the floor.